All right. Now, I have been debating, as I told Mark, over what to talk about today because I have like 4 news stories, but several of them pertain to the coronavirus. So we're probably not going to go with those. But I'll just give you the headlines anyway. Number 1, Italy's contemplating using plexiglass for you to sunbathe and at restaurants to cage you in. Okay. Number 2, North Carolina, which Mark should know about this, had a massive gathering at the Capitol as people were saying, get back to work. And there were like 28,000 that gathered at North Carolina's Capitol. And people are they're ready to go back to work and start making a living. But that's coronavirus related too. And let me see what the other one was. It was, well, we're going to just leave it at that. The one I'm settling on today, though, is the destruction of the British family marriage rate falls to the lowest in recorded history. And you may say, well, why is that important? Well, it's really important because it shows a trend. And it actually shows that. And by the way, this is from, well, I'll just have to figure that out. I found it on InfoWars, I believe, or stevequayle.com. I found it on one of the two. But it's revealed that marriage rate for British heterosexual couples has reached the lowest levels ever recorded. Just get that. So in contrast to other countries like Hungary and Poland, who are actually trying to build up their country, build up marriage and support families, of course, Britain is not. And it has dropped 45% since 1972 and have since 1940. The average age of marriage, listen to this, guys, 35.7 years old for women and 38 for men. Now, guys, that's about past a lot of people can still have kids, but the prime to have kids is over. And anyway, that's a big deal. You're not getting married till you're almost 36 and 38. Wow. Well, the UK has the population is more than doubled, yet these numbers, they match. In other words, the number of people matches those of 1895, even though the population is doubled. I think that's an issue. Anyway, let's see. It says that 21.2 per 1,000 unmarried men and 19.5 per 1,000 unmarried women. Those are the statistics. So that's pretty bad. 23% of marriages being held are being held in a church or other places of worship. So for those that are getting married, there's not really a connection to a religious place. Now that doesn't mean anything, but it also shows the trend of walking. It's just turning away from God. The British government has really put a hard hand, and really in and of itself is the one that's partly to blame, because they placed an emphasis on women entering the workforce through taxation schemes and disincentives for traditional families. The government levies tax on individuals rather than on family units, creating a system in which families are relying on a single income of £60,000. Well, even though they're making that, they take home less than 2 salaries of 30,000. So it's just, the taxation is ridiculous, and it's very anti-family. Now, there are consequences, which I want to talk about, not only there, but in Western societies especially, that this is going to have on community and on life and on the way things are viewed. And we're going to talk about that. But I want to show this in contrast to what's happening in Poland and Hungary, which I thought, this is, wow, it would be great if the U.S. would do something like that maybe. But last year, the conservative prime minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, he was leading the nation's continued recovery from decades of communist occupation. And he put forth these policies geared towards women. He exempted women who have raised more than four children or more from paying income tax for life. As well as introducing a loan scheme for women under the age of 40 that marry for the first time that would be entirely forgiven if the family has 3 children. You say, I mean, guys, that's very pro-family. I mean, that's going to encourage families to be married and have kids. I just think that's really cool. And in 2010, when when he won the election with 2/3 of majority after 8 years of socialist, anti-work, anti-economy, anti-family governance. Wow, it sounds like where we are right now. His country was, he says his country was at the brink of collapse. Therefore, he had to put emphasis on the family to rebuild, because the structure of society starts with the family unit. And when you have a government that's anti-work, anti-economy, socialist, and anti-family, you're going to destroy your society. Well, recent demographic figures speak for themselves for Hungary. The number of marriages is at its 40-year high. The fertility rate is at its 20-year high, and divorces have gone way down, way down. So that speaks for itself. Now, Poland's doing something too. Poland introduced motherhood. They're saying motherhood directly has bringing a maternal pension. So to show gratitude and respect to women who have contributed to society by having 4 or more children. And I was like, wow. I mean, that's just a completely different way to look at family. If you were, now you would have some, oh, we don't need all those kids. Well, I don't know. The word sort of says that quiver's good, but you know, we're down to less than 1, I think, child per couple in the US, which means there's other people coming into the country that are having many children. So you're going to have a takeover with a different system and a different mindset. So family is important. And when our minds automatically go, ooh, we probably shouldn't have that many kids, it shows that we've been brainwashed ourselves to say it's anti-family is actually what it is. So anyway, you guys come in. I want to talk about what is the effect in Western society and the whole world actually, but Western society is where you're going to see it most when marriages go down, when people are actually getting married later, the few who do get married, when religion is removed from it, or any vestige of God, and what happens to our society, especially considering there's other people coming in that are having as many kids as they can. So what do you got to say? What does this do to our world and our community?
It unbalances everything. You know, today in at least here in the United States, what I see is that there are like a lot of mamas and one man, and they're all not married, and this man has babies from each woman, or you know, a woman has a baby from 3 different men, let's say 3 children, and each child is a different father figure. That shows that can bring confusion into the house if you think of it, because you've got the mother with 3 children with 3 different fathers, and these 3 different fathers come, maybe one of them doesn't of the 3, and visits the children, and that can cause friction amongst the kids as well. You know, well, your daddy is this, and there's a lot of disrespect. And in fact, with the marriage situation, you've got young people like we had upstairs for a while there that are moving in together because they go and they have a baby out of wedlock. You know, they're not married, but it's okay. Society says it's okay to have children without getting married, or to consummate and all this stuff, and without getting married. And then what happens is the gentleman decides that, no, this is not what I want. I don't like it, and I'm going to leave because men are not being men, and women are not being women like they should, and the way God had intended them to be and intended for us to be. And he says God says in his word to multiply. Okay. But he says to marry too. He says to be married first, then multiply. Okay. And that's the problem today. There is multiplication without the addition. There's no addition before multiplication. It's like when you go to school, you have to first learn addition and subtraction before you can learn multiplication and division. Well, they've skipped subtraction or addition and subtraction and jumped into multiplication and division, which doesn't help them. And so we have that issue today, and a lot of disrespect amongst each other. You know, you've got there was a commercial on here recently. They were touting about men that are dating women with children, and the man sitting there going, well, I didn't sign up for this. I'm just, I love her, not her kids, blah, 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 and abuse happens. And so a lot of these things happen because of imbalance. It's a
true.
lot of imbalance in this world, and it's sad because it doesn't just hurt the man and the woman, it hurts the children. But also today, I've talked to some of Jessica, my daughter's friends. Well, why don't there's this young girl, she's living with her boyfriend. I said, why don't you guys get married? I mean, you're living together, get married. I don't need that piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. They don't comprehend what marriage means. It's like between a man and a woman, it's a contract. Yeah, it's a piece of paper, but you're promising that woman. If it's a man, you're promising that woman to take care of her. And if it's a woman, you're promising that man that you're going to take care of him as a wife and as a woman. But see, the world has degraded it to where being a wife of a man is like slavery. And that's not what it is.
But don't you think that the breakdown of the family, that has always been the enemy's goal, is to destroy the family? Always.
Yeah, because
you destroy the family, you destroy society.
Yeah, because he didn't want the Messiah to come.
Right.
FYI, enemy, he already came and he's coming again.
That's right. Sherry, did you want to jump in there?
Well, we've been seeing the breakdown of the family for years, and this we've made it acceptable in our society for people to live together without benefit of wedlock, without any kind of commitment to one another. And we've justified it in a lot of ways. We've overlooked it or ignored it. And it was interesting because we know Bishop Solomon comes over here and he had a little girl ask him one time. He said, Bishop Solomon, you have 4 children. Are you married? And he looked at her. He said, do you hear what this child is asking? He said, my child, in my country, you're married. So it's the differences in the culture. Our culture has declined in that area, and there's a lot of absentee fathers. There's no responsibility taken for the children. And it's really ruined our society because there's a lot of children out there. Children need a father. They need the father. Now, the women do the best they can in some bad situations. We all know that. But there's, it's just been an attack of the evil one on the family. And then you made a really good point, too, about people coming in. In Israel, they've had a problem with a lot of the Palestinians having, 10, 12, 14 kids, 2 or 3 wives and all this. And they're getting to where they want to have more people in the Knesset because of the population explosion in the Palestinians. So,
which changes the direction the country goes.
And that's what's happened. What is it, Minnesota, that has so many, and
Michigan.
then they have these the Muslim women that are in Congress today, that they were elected because of that. That's how people get in and take over from the inside out.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely right. Mark, did you want to say anything on it?
Well, not much. I think mostly because really, is there somebody out there that doesn't know all this? I mean, if you live in America, aren't you already familiar with all of this? I mean, none of this is new news as far as I'm concerned, but maybe I'm more informed than everybody else. I'm not that informed. I just think it's something that we all know, and I think we all know that it's a different world than when we grew up. You guys are saying you were 7 years old when you were in 1973. I graduated high school in 1972, and we've seen a lot of different things. In 1973, I barely knew what a divorce was because people just didn't get divorced. I mean, they did, but it was not as common once again like it is today. And I mean, we can belabor the fact that all of this, of course I blame it on the millennials, and except for my daughter. My daughter is an exceptional exception, you know, because she's a millennial, but she is exact opposite when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Right.
Than most of the other ones that are out there. But I mean, each generation gets farther and farther and farther away from traditional values. And it's, like Joe was saying about the piece of paper. Okay, I'm married, but I don't know where that piece of paper is at. What I say the same thing. It's a piece of paper. So what? The piece of paper doesn't mean anything to me. It is the life we live and what we do with it together as a couple that is vital within what we're doing and how we react to that. I mean, we have major knockdown, drag out fights, and then we walk away and come back together and keep living, and hopefully one or both of us learn from whatever both of us were mad about and that type of thing, and we don't just go out and get a divorce because we entered into it with a commitment. And I just don't think that that's something that's even been mentioned. We talk about all kinds of things. Once again, it's the same story. Every one of us know, we've all heard it a million different times, but it all boils down to be a commitment before you enter into marriage. And it's understanding that commitment. It's knowing what a commitment is. It's the same thing as entering into a contract with the Lord. It's a commitment. If you don't understand what commitment is, which most people don't, as they did, like they did 40, 50 years ago, what I remember 40, 50 years ago, and I do remember, is that, people did understand what a commitment was, but not everybody. So you're always going to have this. It's just a breakdown of commitment, if you want to know my opinion of what it is. And people, the people today within the 30 and under range, you're talking about people aren't getting married until they're 36 years old. Well, that's because they have seen no commitments with anybody, not even their parents, not their friends, not in government. They don't see commitment, period. Why do I want to get married 42 times? If I'm 19 years old and I just graduated from school and some girl wants to get married, well, okay, let's get married. And then, by the time I'm 60 years old, I will have been married, 20 times, because I don't have a commitment, and neither does anyone else I know.
Well, another thing is, people say, young people, I've heard them say is, well, it's too hard, or, why do I have to work on it? We had a friend years ago that got married a little bit before us, and they ended up divorcing because the husband sat there and says, it took too much work. I wanted just, because they think Snow White and Prince Charming and Cinderella and Prince Charming and then happily ever after. It doesn't work that way. And that's what the mindset of some of these people are as well, is they thought that's what's going to happen. Oh, once I get married, everything will be perfect because I found the love of my life. Oh, angels are singing and the whole spiel's going on, and you're walking down that aisle in that beautiful dress, and oh, it's Prince Charming. Ooh, and then once reality comes along, they just go, wait a minute, I have to what?
Right.
I got to be back to being Cinderella, back to scrubbing the floors, cleaning the toilet, and they forgot that. A lot of us have forgotten in general. I'm talking in general. A lot of us parents have forgotten to teach our children that commitment is work. It's a job. It's not something that you just sit back and say, hey, I can just sit here and eat my bonbons and watch a movie for the rest of my life and enjoy it.
Hey,
Right.
Joe, you know why Cinderella had to scrub all the floors and everything? She told the wicked stepmother that she was bored.
Well,
You know,
hey,
there's a movie called Yours, Mine, and Ours, and it's actually a true story. It's with the one with Lucille Ball and I think it's Glenn Ford.
Yeah.
And one had like 10 kids, and one had like 7 or 8 kids, and they got married and they had all these children. And there's a very good scene because one of the other brothers is beating up the boyfriend of this girl that's trying to hit on her and all this. And the mother is on the way to the hospital to have the 19th child between the two of them. And the father's talking to the girl and he's telling her, he said, basically what you said. He's like, this is what it's all about. It's being in there every day with all the boring stuff of cleaning. I mean, he didn't put it this way, but that's what he was saying out. He said,
Changing the diapers and
that
everything.
commitment, you know. It's a very good scene in the movie because he said it's not like what you're thinking. It's this every day. We get up every day and we do these things and we're committed to one another. So it was a very good point to that movie.
Yeah,
I like that. I
think
like that example.
Story, actually, they did have that many children.
yeah, that was my favorite scene of that movie because that put it all into perspective and it opened that girl's eyes because she thought rainbows and unicorns. And
Right.
it's not always going to be rainbows and unicorns, so to speak.
Right. Well, I wanted to bring it forward. I know that this stuff happens, but the statistics, some of the statistics, especially the age of marriage, are very telling and how far they've dropped. But also, I thought it was very significant that there are countries out there that are trying to promote the family because they've been devastated by believing and taking hold of that poisonous apple of socialism and anti-family and anti-God and all of this. And so now they're taking the bull by the horn, so to speak, and trying to reverse what the damage that's been done in their society. And, you know, I always tell Jonathan, I always say, you know what? Let Yah will bring forth the kids. You just trust him. So, but hey, that's good talk. And we need to be praying. That's another thing. I wanted to bring out an article too that didn't have to do with coronavirus. You know? Anyway, well, that's enough of that.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.